That's 1-855-237-2346. Matushka Trudy will be answering your calls tonight, so please make sure to turn the show volume off before you come on air. To participate online, we encourage you to go either to the AFR Facebook page at facebook.com/ancientfaithradio and place a question there in the thread for tonight's show where it is being live simulcast, or you can also go to facebook.com/ancientfaithtoday and place a question there in the thread for tonight's show. You can also send us an email at aft@ancientfaith.com. So let's get started. The statistics that we have seen in North America regarding some Orthodox jurisdictions is jarring. Clergy are aging, and within 10 years, there will likely be a significant number of retirements. While many of our seminaries are full of young men and women studying theology and other related church subjects, for various reasons, not all male candidates go on to receive ordination. And even if and when new clergy are ordained, there is also the increasing problem in some jurisdictions of inadequate funding to pay full-time salaries for clergy in order to support their families. Added to that is the pressing need for mission parishes all across North America where no parishes currently exist in populated areas. And there is also the challenge of heterodox clergy who might be received into the Orthodox Church and could bring their professional and pastoral experience with them. But it is rare for them to find a clerical position within Orthodoxy that would be commensurate with their current remuneration. And let's add to this the non-clerical ministerial positions of service by other talented and gifted individuals, both men and women, who could serve the church in various significant ways, for instance, in music and education. But there may be few or no positions to support their work. So let's tackle these important questions tonight. How do men pursue the call to service in the church as clergy? What is the process of discernment? And what are the qualifications for candidates? And how can women and men discern non-clerical calls to service within the church? What educational and professional outlets are there for those who hear the call by God to serve Him? And that call might be confirmed by the church. Here to discuss these important questions are some members of the faculty of this year's DVP Practicum in Santa Rosa. First, we have Bishop Daniel of Santa Rosa, who is the resident hierarch at this week's Practicum. He is the auxiliary bishop of the Diocese of the West in the Orthodox Church in America. We also have the director of the Diaconal Vocations program, Father Kirill Sokolov, the Dean of Holy Trinity Cathedral in San Francisco, California. And finally, we have Father Lawrence Margitich, the Dean of St. Seraphim Cathedral here in Santa Rosa, California. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. We're so happy to have you. I'll ask you to kind of speak into your microphone as we discuss these, and we want to remind our listeners, 1-855-AF-RADIO would love to hear from you on these important subjects. Your Grace, let's begin with you. In your opening address yesterday, you spoke about being called specifically by the church, and I thought that that was a very intriguing way to put the idea of being called to serve the church. Usually when we think of a calling, people often think of having a calling directly from God. So how does someone discern whether a calling is truly from God? And then what does it mean to be called specifically by the church?
Thank you, Father Thomas. Before I begin to respond to your questions, though, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of His Eminence Archbishop Benjamin, to welcome you to the Diocese of the West.
Thank you.
I know that you were able to serve this past Sunday at Holy Trinity Cathedral in San Francisco, which is, of course, the oldest Orthodox parish in the lower 48, and it has great significance not only for us here in the Diocese of the West, but also for all the members of the Orthodox Church in America, and indeed for all Orthodox Christians in America.
Thank you.
And also, it's very special to welcome you to Santa Rosa, here to this wonderful cathedral parish, and especially for this seminar, this Practicum, the 14th annual Diaconal training Practicum. It gives us the opportunity to bring people, as you've seen, to bring people from throughout the United States, from throughout the church, and also we have representation here of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, which is also a true blessing to us. So welcome to this beautiful cathedral church, and your listeners are sharing with us in this, and the beautiful campus and the wonderful community here at St. Seraphim's and their great hospitality. They always offer wonderful hospitality here in the very beautiful Sonoma County. So,
Indeed.
So welcome to everyone.
Thank you.
As you mentioned last night in my opening remarks, I spoke about vocation, specifically vocation to ordained ministry, and maybe even more specifically, the call to serve the church as a deacon. But I think it's important also at this point just to speak of, before getting into that, to speak of the common vocation, the common call that all of us have as Christians. That call comes to us by God's grace. It's a gift. It's God's mercy to us that we're called to know and to follow and to serve Jesus Christ, and that we are also called to live our baptismal vocation in many ways, in many areas of service. Speaking last night, of course, we focused in on the vocation to ordained ministry, and again, specifically, the vocation to the diaconate. And so you've asked me, how do we know that God has called a person to the ordained ministry, to the diaconate? How does a person know that the call is from God and not from themselves? Because it's very easy for us in our life in general to kind of fool ourselves into believing that what I want is what God wants, that God's will is my will.
Right.
Sometimes we pray the Our Father, of course, saying, "Thy will be done," but sometimes what we're really saying is, "My will be done, Lord, please do what I'd like."
Right.
So I think that we can fool ourselves, and it's very important when discerning a vocation to the ordained ministry. It's very important for us to listen to the voice of God, of course, as God speaks to us in whatever ways He does speak to us, in prayer and reflection and meditation and in study of the Holy Scriptures. But it's also important for us to recognize that God speaks to us through our brothers and sisters. God speaks to us through the church. If I feel on my own that I'm called to ordained ministry and no one else sees it, no one else in the parish or in my community of Christian friends sees that, then what does that say? I think it says that in some way we're kind of fooling ourselves, or we're making our desires and we're stating our will rather than that of God. I think a sure proof of a call, a vocation to ordained ministry is in the voice of the church, speaking to us through our friends, through our community, through our parish. The people of God recognize who is called to be an ordained minister. I trust the judgment of God's people on that. We read in the 6th chapter, as I recalled last evening, that the apostles, when they chose the deacons, it was actually they put the selection to the community. They said, choose men of good repute and filled with the Holy Spirit. You choose, the church choose, men of good repute, filled with the Holy Spirit, and we will ordain them. We will lay our hands upon them. And indeed, it's repeated that these men were chosen by the church and presented to the apostles, who then ordained them as the first deacons in the church, the first servants set aside to serve in very real, concrete ways. So we have that as the beginning, as the model of how vocations come about. The church identifies people. A person can say, I have a vocation all the day long. They can make it a mantra, but unless the church says that person has a vocation, quite frankly, they don't. So I trust when people are in a parish setting, when they're serving in a parish setting, when they're recognized as leaders in their parish community, when they're caring for those who are poor or sick, if they're involved in education, if they're involved in any ministries that a parish might have, that's a good indication, and the people recognize that. I think that when men are ordained, no one is surprised that that person is being ordained. I would hope not.
Right.
Because, again, God has spoken through the church, and that call comes from God through the church. And a person can recognize that it is indeed a call from God if the church confirms that. A person, again, let me just repeat, a person might feel themselves called, but we have great ways, we have great human tools that enable us to fool ourselves in many ways. So when someone's discerning a vocation to anything within the church, particularly to ordained ministry, they really need to listen to that voice of God, but not in some mystical, miraculous, lightning bolt from heaven kind of way, but in rather the simple words that are spoken by the people who know you, the people who encourage you. I think that's a sure sign, a confirmation, if you will, that God is calling a person.
Thank you, Your Grace. I appreciate that very much, because this is sometimes the question that parish priests face. A young man will say, I would like to be a priest, or I would like to be a deacon. But sometimes it's very obvious. Sometimes this confirmation is there, but it seems sometimes that for whatever reason, this person has romanticized that position, when clearly there may not, it seems to me or to us, be that real true calling there. So I appreciate your words there.
I think that even when a parish priest recognizes that someone has a vocation and encourages that, there should also be maybe a time of testing and trying. You know, when a person first comes and says, I want to be a deacon, I think the priest, or the parish priest most likely, would say, let's wait and see about that. You know, pray about that. Let's reflect upon that. Let's wait. Let's listen more, and lead and guide and support the individual as they go through that kind of period, which might be very trying to the individual, but in the end will benefit them.
Very good. 1-855-AF-RADIO. If you have a question for any of our panelists tonight, but also if you yourself are discerning a calling to be a clergyman, maybe a priest or a deacon, maybe you want to serve the church in another way, we would love to hear from you. Let's turn to another one of our panelists, Father Kirill Sokolov from Holy Trinity Cathedral in San Francisco. Father Kirill, you serve on the Board of Theological Education, and you are actually leading the Diaconal Vocations program. You are the fearless leader and organizer of all of this today, no matter what others may say that you don't have that ability. As you said yesterday, you don't do the icebreakers very well, but you certainly handled it with great leadership skill yesterday. What are the challenges of educating and forming men? And here now we're specifically speaking in your position as the Diaconal Vocations Program Director, as serving on the Board of Theological Education. What are the challenges of educating and forming men who desire to enter this program, to become a deacon, or to serve the church in other official ways?
Thank you, Father Tom. One of the most amazing experiences of our church in North America in the last few decades has been the growth of the diaconate from something that was extremely rare. Very few parishes had deacons. It was a very uncommon thing to a reality now across all Orthodox jurisdictions in our country, the Orthodox Church in America, for sure among them, where we have candidates frequently who wish to serve as deacons, as ministers at the altar, as leaders in their communities, as servants of Christ, as assistants to the parish priest and their whole community, to the bishops, of course. The Holy Synod of the Orthodox Church in America several decades ago created what we used to call a late vocations program. And it was called that because ultimately we think it would be amazing if anyone who wanted to serve the church in any capacity, woman or man, deacon or priest or lay, any ministry, had the opportunity to be at seminary, to spend multiple years in a community where everyone was going in the same direction, working towards the same goals. However, the Holy Synod of Bishops realized that there are many men who are called to serve as deacons, who are willing to serve as deacons. And I think this is important, and His Grace highlighted this, who probably already are being seen as that kind of servant leader in their community before they go through any kind of formation.
Yeah.
So we created a program many decades ago now where people who are over the age of 35, who have established jobs, families, and so forth, have the opportunity to not go to seminary, but instead to study for what we call 4 semesters of academic content in the areas of Holy Scripture, dogmatics or patristics, church history, and of course the liturgy itself, and to prepare for that formal, particular ordained ministry of a deacon in a parish setting. Again, we would prefer that everyone could go to seminary, but it's just not possible. And the outpouring of interest is always great. We have this year, for example, at our Practicum, we have 33 men who are here at various stages in their preparation. We now call our program the Diaconal Vocations program because we didn't want to confuse matters. We didn't want to say, well, this is for all ministries or any ministry. We wanted this to be really tailored specifically for the diaconate in Christ, for that liturgical diaconate in our parishes. So at this time we have we almost always have about 45 people in the program nationally. To be in the Diaconal Vocations program, as His Grace pointed out, it requires a period of discernment. People are required to be in the Orthodox Church for at least 3 years, a bare minimum of 3 years. And in fact, they're required by our bishops to be in the same parish for 3 years, which, of course, there's exceptions made for appropriate circumstances, like people being relocated by their jobs and so forth.
Right.
But the goal is to see stability. The goal is to have stability, to be ready to serve with as little distraction as possible. So it's really a wonderful thing to see. You mentioned challenges. What's not a challenge is interest. There's always people who want to serve in this role. Sometimes we find that it's hard for us to learn all of the aspects of diaconal service. Some of the liturgical actions, the sacred actions, unless we've been serving in the altar for quite some time, unless we've been singing in the choir, a deacon has to use his voice, movement, his whole person, his whole physicality almost, not to mention intellect and family life and so forth. So it really can be a challenge to learn all the requirements of serving a full year of services, the cycle, the details of the rubrics. And I think we've been really struggling with some success, thanks to God, to have more intentional ways to practice these things, such as this practicum here.
Good, because we are going to talk a little bit about the more formal aspects of theological education, and we don't want to forget that we have seminaries. The Orthodox Church in America has several seminaries. Of course, the other jurisdictions have many, many seminaries, and that aspect of our formation for priests and bishops is very important, but this certainly plays an important role in the health of parishes and the ministry of parishes. We want to remind our listeners that you can call in with your questions or comments at 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. If you have any questions online, you can send them to aft@ancientfaith.com. We also want to talk to the Dean of St. Seraphim Cathedral, Father Lawrence Margitich. Father Lawrence, first of all, congratulations on your magnificent campus here. Tomorrow, you will be celebrating in your beautiful temple the 20th anniversary of the consecration of that magnificent building dedicated to the glory of God. Your father was a priest here. And on Thursday, your son is going to be ordained to the Holy Diaconate. What a tremendous day and week this will be for you. I'd like to know maybe some personal answers here. How did you discern your own calling to the priesthood? And also, if you don't mind, how did you help your son discern his calling? And in more general, how do you offer advice to men who may be seeking to pursue ordination?
Lots of questions there, Father. Lots of questions. I'm honored to be the host of this really wonderful event and in exalted company with His Grace, Bishop Daniel and Father Kirill and yourself. We go back to seminary days. Yes. At the time, things were different in the church. I mean, you and I were still in our early 20s when we were at the seminary. At the moment, the age, the median age of seminarians is probably much higher, and the seminarians are married. We are also, we grew up in church families. The three of us are children of sons of priests. Right. So that's a little out of the ordinary. So our experience is much, much different, I think, than what people experience today. When I graduated seminary, I had no intention of being ordained. And I think you had the same idea. Both of us had music backgrounds. Right. And we were pursuing work as church musicians. Of course, you know, salary of a church musician then and now is not enough to live on. So we both had regular jobs, and that was our life for a very long time. I remember it was October 1st, 1994. And the date only came back to me just as we were talking now, because I was thinking when it happened. It was our feast day of the protection of the Holy Virgin. We hadn't yet built St. Seraphim. I went into the rectory after the Divine Liturgy, and His Grace Bishop Diaconal was there speaking with my father and at the time Archdeacon Vincent. And Bishop Diaconal looked at me and said, "When are you going to send me a petition for ordination?" I thought, well, there's a call to the church.
Interesting.
A literal,
yeah, right.
A call. And I gave him a very lame answer, kind of an aw shucks type of thing. You know, Your right. Grace, I'm not worthy. And didn't some of the Holy Fathers not want to be ordained? Yeah, and he said, "What do you have to do with the Holy Fathers?" Ooh, yes. And we all kind of laughed because it was true. Yeah. The excuse was not valid. So things fell into place. And in 95, I was ordained deacon, which I served as a deacon for 2 years here under the direction of my father. And then 2 years later, ordained priest. It became a natural progression without a huge amount of painful reflection. It was already 10 years since graduation. Yeah. So it was time to actually look at the reality of my life and what I'd been trained to do and accept it. And that's the way I felt about it.
Your son, how did that all come about?
He went through fire and water.
Wow.
He went through lots of reflection and self-critique, and if he was here, he could tell you. And he realized also that the church was calling him, and people here. Father Carrill had a conversation with him. My son told me. Bishop Daniel had a conversation with him. You told me, well, that was 2 years ago. You should think about the diaconate. And he did over those 2 years. So that's how that happened. Yeah. He also had a music background, also a son of a priest. Again, it's kind of rare.
Today it is, yeah.
Today.
Although maybe that will change now. I think, in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, when we had this massive a number of converts in the 90s and 2000s, there was a kind of a reboot, and you had the seminaries filled with people who had not been Orthodox for a while. But now their children are becoming interested, and maybe this will start a new wave.
Oh, may God grant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are seeing that. That's true.
Absolutely. 1-855-AF-RADIO. What we're going to do is we're going to go for a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to open up the questions to the whole panel and also to the people who are gathered here about real practical issues. For instance, there is the issue today, I know in Western Pennsylvania, this is an issue where parishes may not be able to afford supporting a priest. And we have a growing number of bivocational priests. This is becoming a real dilemma because then you can't give your full attention to the ministering and the growth of the parish. How do we deal with the growing number of bivocational priests? How do we deal with parishes that we want to grow and flourish, but maybe don't have the ability at the moment to support a full-time priest? And then we're going to talk about some other ministries in the church. How can we support men and women who want to become iconographers and educators and musicians? So when we come back, we'll take your calls at 1-855-AF-RADIO. If you have any questions that you want to put online, remember to go to facebook.com/Ancient Faith. Oh, actually, it's Ancient Faith Ministries. Forgive me that we did change the name of the Facebook page. So go to facebook.com/Ancient Faith Ministries and place a question in the thread for tonight's show. It is 6:30 p.m. on the West Coast where I am right now, 9:30 p.m. back home in Pittsburgh. We will be right back.
Father Tom will be back in a moment. In the meantime, the lines are open at 855-237-2346. Don't go away.
Hi, this is John Maddox. You know, when you support Ancient Faith Radio, you're not only helping to make this ministry possible for you, but also for people like Bryce in Australia.
I'd firstly just like to say that I love your show and what you do. It means a lot to all of us listening. I'm down in Australia, and over here, Orthodoxy is basically unheard of. I'm not Orthodox. I was raised into an evangelical Protestant family. However, from a gradual exposure and desire to learn more about Orthodoxy, I've come to agree and see truth in pretty much everything the Church teaches. The nearest English-speaking Orthodox church is several hours away, and I feel all alone in my pursuit of the faith here. Currently, my only exposure to Orthodoxy is through Ancient Faith Radio and my friend. How should I introduce the idea that I may be inquiring into Orthodoxy to my parents? Thanks again, Bryce.
Would you consider a donation to AFR right now? You can do so on our app or go to our website at ancientfaith.com/support. Ancient Faith Radio, here for you and for people all over the world.
back with Ancient Faith Today and Father Tom Soroka. Give us a call at 855-237-2346. Here once again is Father Tom.
We are back at the beautiful campus of St. Seraphim Cathedral in Santa Rosa, California, and we're speaking with some of the teachers at the Diaconal Vocations program Practicum. Here we're speaking with Bishop Daniel, Father Kirill, and Father Lawrence. So, gentlemen, I want to open this up to all of you, and that is the financial issue. And I know it's a difficult subject because in my own situation, I was a bivocational priest for 20 years. I worked a secular job. And I sort of did that, I would say, somewhat at the expense of the parish. There were certain things that I couldn't do. I couldn't serve weekday liturgies all the time. I did a lot of evening work. So it's very, very difficult. Thank God, we built up the parish and built up the stewardship. And now I'm able to more freely serve in the parish. So to any of you, inevitably, when we discuss pursuing these callings, we have to consider the aspects of financial, the cost of education, when it involves going to seminary, moving your family, and then the second issues of parishes being able to financially support a full-time priest. So I just want to get your thoughts, any of you, on where do we start with dealing with these questions? Either one of those. Bishop Daniel, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I want to begin by saying that really when we think of it, every Christian community is a mission community. We're all entrusted with that mission, that great commission that the Lord gave to His church. That said, we also think of missions as fledgling communities, where people have come together under the leadership of a priest with the blessing of the bishop. And they're small communities. And even though they sacrifice much to come together as a community materially and in terms of energy, and certainly mission priests sacrifice a lot as well. We cannot underestimate the sacrifice that mission priests and their families make to establish missions. That said, financial challenges are a big thing even for some of our normal, regular, long-established parishes, and we have to begin to figure out as well how to address that question of finances. One thing, though, speaking of mission communities, one thing that the Orthodox Church in America has had is the Mission Grants Program. And it's a wonderful concept because what it does is it gives grants, and someone can clarify me here, the number of grants and the 3-year, I think it's a 3-year program, in which the priest is really bivocational. But the grant program is structured in such a way that at the end of having participated in the grants program, that priest can become a full-time pastor.
Yeah, I can just clarify that. I know a guy that runs it. So the issue here is the grant is so that they will not be bivocational. It's a matching grant for the first year. So you're absolutely on the right track. In other words, the idea is so that the priest doesn't have to be in fact, the rule is you can't be bivocational. 50% of the salary comes from the parish, 50% comes from the grant, and then that kind of backs off by the third year.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate that. But the idea is to give support to the community, the mission community, financially, and then eventually to wean them off of that when when they have greater numbers and more income. But it's an excellent concept, and the Orthodox Church in America doesn't do it in a big way. Although, we could be doing more, I think. We just need to refocus our efforts onto mission activity. The great charism of the Orthodox Church in America is missions, to missionary work. We were founded based upon missionaries coming to North America, specifically Alaska, to proclaim the gospel to the native peoples. And that's a special charism which we continue in our church, and I hope that we never lose sight of that we never become so satisfied with ourselves that we think we can sit back on our laurels and let the Lord take care of the rest of it. It's important that all of us, lay people, clergy, monastics, all of us see ourselves as participating in the mission of the church.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Father Kirill or Father Lawrence, any thoughts about the idea of the financial issue? I don't want to sound negative in any way. I certainly don't demean priests that are bivocational. They have to deal with that. Because I was there for decades. So, what's the answer? How do we deal with it?
I don't know if any of us have the answer. I think we all have things we want to think about and work on and keep praying about and striving towards. To me, it seems like we're at a moment, at a crossroads in our church life in this country, in this continent, maybe in the world actually, where we have to become more and more entrepreneurial and really respond to the situations as they change, not only in parish life. A particular city, a particular region may go through ups and downs, but also I think our own energy level changes through the decades of our lives, and maybe not in predictable ways. And I think our bishops, our chancellors, our deans, those who teach in seminaries, those who are responsible for growth are going to just inevitably become more and more personalized in the way they approach our development. My background's kind of in organizational development, but I think the important thing may become, as we go forward, really evaluating each of ourselves in a community, in a conversation that may shift over time. Maybe right now I have more energy to respond to something in a bivocational way, and maybe another day I'm more suited for full-time parish ministry. I think the tragedy of the financial crisis that affects most of our churches and parishes all the time isn't so much the priestly vocation, actually, is that we leave so much excellent talent on the sidelines with our women graduates. I'm thinking of from seminary, particularly with the musicians that are out there that have the talent to serve. I'm really looking forward to a day when we're able to keep growing in all of those areas.
Indeed. And that actually leads me to the next question. And again, we want to remind our listeners, if you'd like to call in with a question or a comment, we'd love to hear from you. 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. So let's talk about that, about the idea of these more diverse ministries within the church. How do we develop educators so that it's not just a kind of a hobby, right? Where sometimes what we do is we bemoan the quality of Christian education in our parishes, but then we expect people to be Christian educators kind of like on the side for 30 minutes a week without any type of real training or commitment, or even, God forbid, remuneration. I mean, let's think about, paying these people that give so much to this. I can say honestly, we just had a very successful vacation church school at our church. We had 30 children. We had 5 or 6 teachers there, many parents helping. I would love to hand out, hey, here's, $500 for doing this. It was just so wonderful. You put so much time and effort into that, but it's always volunteer. So, Father Lawrence, your wife is a very accomplished iconographer. Of course, you are a church musician. Your son one is, how do we encourage more diverse ministries in music and education and iconography, even academics, when parishes actually seem to be decreasing the number of full-time or part-time ministries because they seem that they can't afford it?
Mission parishes from the get-go need to have a line item for saving money to bring in a choir director. I think what's asked of a volunteer is way above and beyond most volunteers' ability to deliver that type of thing.
Right.
The singing is it's not a simple endeavor. If we could plan ahead, and the same thing with Vacation Bible School. I mean, sure, give $500 to each teacher, but we have to plan ahead and budget for that at the beginning of the year so that it's already there, and it's not just well, we should have done that, you know. Iconographers have it difficult, of course. They're all bivocational. They're either mothers raising children and trying to paint as my wife did, and now we have grandchildren. So, or you have a man with a regular job and he's painting on the side. It's what we value really is what we're going to spend money on. And you hire an architect to build a church, you hire a plumber to come in, you hire the electrician.
Right.
Well, there's a ministry. It's not just a job, obviously, of iconography and of music and of teaching. And there's another aspect, too, that I'll bring up, internship for seminary graduates or for seminary in between semesters, the summertime, to bring in, to give them a taste of a little more responsibility, a little bit more about parish life. That's not the parish that they grew up in or that they converted in. This is planning ahead for, future leaders of the church.
Indeed, indeed. Bishop Daniel.
I think it's all about us setting our priorities, quite simply. Father Lawrence mentioned having a dedicated line item in a parish budget for a church musician. Wouldn't it be wonderful if all of our dioceses and all of our parishes so valued mission work that everyone would have a line item to support theological education and specifically to support mission efforts, throughout the Orthodox Church in America?
Yeah, the reason why I bring this subject up at all is I believe in 5 to 10 years, we're going to find ourselves at a crisis point. And if we don't have enough clergy, and we don't have clergy that, like you said, we value, right, with our financial offerings and so forth, we will find ourselves, and I please, to the listeners and everybody that's out there, I do not mean this in any demeaning way at all, but you can see the lack of vocations in the Roman Catholic Church. They are suffering right now because they don't have enough priests to cover their parishes, or they have one priest for every 2,500 people. That is one issue because they don't have enough priests to serve their parishes. But in our case, the vineyards that have been planted will wither on the vine if they don't have shepherds. In my particular diocese right now, we have deacons going to 13, 14, 15 parishes. This is not a way to sustain a parish. No offense to the deacons, but the point is a parish needs a priest, and a priest needs remuneration, and this is very, very important. So what I'd like to do right now is we do have many participants that are sitting here, and they have some comments for us and questions, and we'd love to hear from them. What I'd like to do is, for those who are going to ask a question or make a comment, if you could please introduce yourself, where you're from, your name, and the parish that you're from, and then your comment or question.
Thank you, Father Thomas. My name is James. I'm from Santa Rosa, California. I'm a member of the Vocations Ministry. I'm
Good evening. Am I coming through on the microphone okay?
Yeah.
Great. Your Grace, Reverend Fathers, thank you so much for having us here for this week. My name is Pedro Sarsama. I'm from St. Matthew Orthodox Church in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I come from a parish that is fiscally very robust. They do provide a great deal of support for things. Even my coming out here this week is through the generosity of my parish. My own studies have been supported through the parish. We've had folks go to seminary and receive parish support. When I arrived there, it was already a very robust parish where there's a culture of giving, of sacrificial giving, whether it's a wealthy patron or the widow's mite. We see this pretty consistently across members of the parish. And I think that a lot of the issues being discussed tonight are really around those parishes that don't have robust giving for some reason or another. I wasn't at this parish prior to see if there had been a period where there wasn't giving, but in its 30 some odd years of existence, it seems like it's been pretty consistent about the way that the parish has been supported by the community. My question, and Father Tom, maybe you have a particular insight into this given your own parish experience recently, what can be done to bring parishes from being less financially stable to being able to support a priest for full time, to being able to provide compensation for positions like choir director, education director? If we look at what our Protestant brothers and sisters are doing, they have very small congregations that are able to support multiple full-time ministers. And, you know, in some ways that kind of puts us to shame with what we're doing in the Orthodox world.
Gentlemen, any thoughts? You know, I do want to put my own 2 cents in there, no pun intended, but I know I have friends who are Roman Catholic priests. I have friends who are Protestant ministers. I have the Pan-Orthodox choir, and we've sung at various very large Protestant churches, and they say, you know, this is our office, and this is our facility, and this is my secretary, and this is the minister of music, you know, and they all have these beautiful offices, and I think, wow, it's unbelievable. And you're right, Pedro, that, you know, we're sort of being put to shame in that sense that we don't have these full-time ministries. Your Grace, comments on this?
Well, I think a lot of it actually has to do with the pastoral leadership in the parish. You know, there's that Russian saying, as the priest, so goes the parish. That the priest can provide enthusiasm and inspiration and simple education to the community, so the community is excited about the faith, so the community wants to share that faith, so the community wants to contribute to the life of not just the local community, but of the church in general. So I think that, and a parish, it shouldn't be solely upon the priest, but he is the, if you will, and forgive me for using this, but he's the cheerleader in a lot of ways for the parish community, and he should be inspire his parish council people and the people that are in leadership in any kind of way to share in that vision, to share in that enthusiasm, to share in that desire for growth. And what happens as a result, when people feel committed and when they're excited, I think that stewardship comes along with that, and even to the point of not just stewardship, but really sacrificial giving even. If people see value in what we're doing as the church, and there's nothing that has any greater value, if people see that what we do in the church has value, and they recognize that, then I think that, you know, the money comes, to put it bluntly, that the financial support becomes part of that. So in your community there, St. Matthew's, God bless you, and obviously someone, the community as a whole is doing something right to be able to have, to get away from that myopic vision of it's just us, our little parish, and we just need to meet the bills and we're fine. No, it's much more than that. You know, a parish should be excited to have extra ministries that can be funded, you know, because that's a sign of a good, healthy parish in which the people of God, the faithful, understand what their role is in encouraging and supporting and proclaiming the gospel.
Okay, we have a comment on the question also from one of the participants. Can you state your name and your parish, please?
Hi, this is John Thompson, and I attend St. John the Baptist Church in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, and I've been in this program for about 2 years. And I just wanted to make a comment about my own experience, where my involvement in the Diaconal Vocations program has mainly been something between me and my priest. And in one sense, I've been serving at the altar, but otherwise my service is almost invisible. I'm involved in various ministries in the church. But my only comment is that the church, I think, may need to do a better job of capturing the imaginations of some of the young men, particularly the young men. And we have quite a few very capable altar servers in my church who are now on their way off to college. But to capture the imagination that this opportunity to serve is not just something that applies to someone else, but to sort of open the door to their imagination to say that this is actually a possibility for me, maybe not in the short term, but perhaps in the long term. And I was sort of surprised at the reception of my parish council, because I serve on the parish council, when I asked them to support me with the $1,500 that it cost me to come out here to this program. And they were very receptive. I was surprised at how quickly they responded to that. So that was to me was a good sign, but I think that there maybe need to be even some non-financial encouragement that takes place. That's my comment.
So are you saying that the encouragement should be at the parish level or at the program level, where nationally they're saying, hey, we have this program? How do you envision that?
Oh, I would say definitely at the parish level, and that so to speak, that this is sort of something that is happening in our parish that we want to encourage, and we want other people to think about this so that it becomes as much on the table as the local parish festival or educational needs or other things that are going on, because this is a very real need that is taking place in our diocese.
Good. Very good. Father Kirill.
I think there's something that John brought up that really makes me think of an experience many of us had a few weeks ago at our church camp with the youth. And it really struck me that it's not so much that there's only parishes that can't afford priests. I'm actually worried a little bit that our parishes that are doing well in terms of that sacrificial giving, who are willing to just write a check for somebody to travel across the country to go to a practicum, who are engaged in multiple ministries and have a thriving choir and all of these wonderful things. I wonder if we're somehow shy as a church, as a culture, about encouraging people to go to seminary, to really consider the priesthood. And I actually think we are at a junction soon, if not already, where we may have more appropriate salaried positions available than candidates to fill them. And when I look around the campfire at our St. Eugene's camp, and when I look around the room here, I want to try myself. I want to test myself. I want to encourage myself and all of my colleagues to be a little bit more open to encouraging people to pursue these vocations. I think there is some sort of culture of shyness we have around encouraging people in these ways.
Your Grace. Yep.
Well, I just wanted to add to that if any priests are listening tonight, that the priest has a very particular role in promoting, encouraging vocations, especially to ordained ministry. And I think I'm looking across here at Father James Jorgensen, who today is celebrating the 52nd anniversary of his ordination to the diaconate. And our senior priests, what an example that they provide to us who are more active at this point probably in our lives, but what an example they provide for our young people as well. And I think we need to highlight the history of fidelity to the ministry that people like Father James can give. But it really ends up, I think, that in many ways, the question of vocations does end up at the feet of the priest. in terms of encouraging. And of course, if you're happy in your priesthood, if you're loving your people, if your parish is growing, that enthusiasm is going to be seen by the young people around you, and they will also possibly be called to share that life that has been so fulfilling for you.
Thank you, Your Grace. We have another comment or question from one of the participants. Could you state your name and where you're from?
Yeah, I'm Stephen Hall. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and my question is kind of going back to Pedro's question as well. In my limited experience, I've found that clergy, parish clergy, tend to be sort of hesitant to talk about finances and giving, especially when it seems that they'll be benefiting from this sort of thing, and there tends to be that sort of reticence there. And I've also found that the sort of financial conversations about keeping the lights on get a response only for a short period of time. They become fairly exhausting. So I'm curious to hear from you, fathers, and Your Grace. How have you, over the years, found a winsome way of helping our people to understand that there's no such thing as theoretical generosity, that the demands of the gospel and following Christ actually brings us to a point of seeking freedom from money and the love of money? How have you found in your own ministries to present that in a winsome way to your people?
Fathers, Your Grace?
Well, I think that the words you use really express it. You lead the people to see that need. Again, if they're seeing value in what you're doing, value in what the church is doing, I think that they will respond accordingly. You know, I'm not a person that likes to talk about money. And I think most priests, most clergy are not. Of course, there are some clergy who are wiser than I am in those areas, who are who very easily and very eloquently are able to talk about money with their parishioners in a way that's not somehow offensive or intrusive. But I think that if we, again, show that what we have is valuable and that it's something that is life-changing and changes their lives personally, I think that people come along. But I think you do have to make the ask, as they say,
right,
every so often, so that people, and a good way to do that is simply, the word transparency, is to be transparent in a parish with what your income is and what your outflow is, what is lacking in terms of ministries that could be funded, that aren't being funded, and talk about it in a way that it becomes a topic that is just part and parcel of what we do, because it is something that we need. We can't, the church is in the world but not of the world. We're in the world and we have to pay bills.
Father Lawrence?
To use a different word, His Grace spoke about value. I'll use the word a vision. If a vision, some aspect of church life is articulated in a way that is inviting, is interesting, is challenging, then people do give. Someone steps up and begins a whole process of inspiring other people to step up. This is what happened here with our internship program. A parishioner said, "It's great we have the food festival, but we should be focusing on giving value to church life, not just the parish."
Great.
It's money that we use, of course, but let's use it in a way that's going to benefit the whole church, not just our parish. So donations were given. We were able to support an intern for an entire year and provide a place for that intern and his wife to live right here on the church property. Wow. because of those contributions, because a vision was articulated not just by me, it really came from the community.
Yeah.
And once that starts, and then, same with iconography, people can see something beautiful and people want a part of that too.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Just creating that vision and saying what can be, and allowing people an opportunity to make that happen is really an important point.
And to be trustworthy of that vision,
right,
not just to speak about it.
Indeed. We have one last comment, and then we're going to wrap it up. Can you introduce yourself, please, and where you're from?
Yes, thank you. My name is Reader Michael Huning. I'm from Holy Transfiguration Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I just wanted to offer one comment. I think answering to some of what we've been talking about here, that yes, I absolutely agree. We need that the priest there who's the dynamic vision person, and we're blessed to have that at Holy Transfiguration. I want to just give an encouragement to those who are in lay leadership. I think lay leadership is really important in a parish, and they can be that person that when you say there's the ask, and there has to be, they can be the advocate for the priest, and to say, yes, this man has a family and he has a job and we want him to be able to serve our parish full time. Let's do what we need to do, set these line items up to make that happen. And I served as a warden at our church for 5 years. I think probably other people in this practicum here probably served in leadership roles in their church, maybe on parish councils and such. We, as in those roles, have that sort of unique opportunity to be able to be the voice, be the person, so it doesn't seem self-serving for a priest to say, yes, I need a little more money to feed my family, or yes, we need money to pay a choir director so we can have a good product or an even better product. We have at Father Patrick's encouragement, our priest, we do have a line item for a choir director. It's not much, but at least we're working on that. We have a line item for ministry. We have for church school and all these things. Then I think that's where the parish council, the lay leadership, can really step up and be the people to say, yes, we have this vision. This is what we want to execute. Here, we are your team to help you execute that.
Excellent point. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, Your Grace, Fathers Kirill and Fathers Lawrence, thank you so much for your input. Let's give them a big round of applause for really tackling some very difficult questions, but I hope that this was an encouragement to everyone who is listening, to those who are being or feel that they are being called to ministry in the church or to serve the church in some way. There is always an opportunity for everyone to exercise their gifts. And I think this is very important. Whether they are wearing the robes or not, there is always this opportunity. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Father Thomas.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Before I share a few final thoughts, I want to again offer my sincere thanks to His Grace Bishop Daniel, Father Kirill, and Father Lawrence, as well as our live audience for joining us tonight. Thank you to Matushka Trudy for engineering the program, everybody that listened in, and those who provided comments online. Here's a few final thoughts. One of my favorite hymns that I look forward to every year is sung at the Bridegroom Matins of Holy Tuesday. It speaks of using the gifts that God has given us to build up the body of Christ. And it states this: "Come, O faithful, let us work zealously for the Master, for he distributes wealth to his servants. Let each of us, according to his ability, increase his talent of grace. Let one be adorned in wisdom through good works. Let another celebrate a service in splendor. The one distributes his wealth to the poor. The other communicates the word to those untaught. Thus we shall increase what has been entrusted to us, and as faithful stewards of grace, we shall be accounted worthy of the Master's joy. Make us worthy of this, O Christ our God, in thy love for mankind." And that's our show for tonight. Remember to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/ancientfaithtoday. Share out our program after that's posted. Give us your feedback and contact us with any ideas or topics that you might want to hear about. Join us next Tuesday evening for another edition of Ancient Faith Today. Good night, everybody.
Are you an Orthodox Christian who wonders how to explain to your Baptist grandmother, your Buddhist neighbor, or the Jehovah's Witness at your door how your faith differs from theirs? Or are you a member of another faith who is curious what Orthodoxy is all about? Look no further. In Orthodoxy and Heterodoxy, Father Andrew Stephen Damick covers the gamut of ancient heresies, modern Christian denominations, fringe groups, and major world religions, highlighting the main points of each faith. This book is an invaluable reference for anyone who wants to understand the faiths of those they come in contact with, as well as their own.
A parishioner actually asked me at one point, so what really is the difference between us and other Christian groups? Because they thought there really wasn't that much, especially that there wasn't that much of a difference between us and Roman Catholics. And I said, well, how much time do you have?
The updated 2017 copy of Orthodoxy and Heterodoxy is fully revised and significantly expanded. Major new features include a full chapter on Pentecostalism and the charismatic movements, and 2 new appendices, relationships with the non-Orthodox and how and why I became an Orthodox Christian. More details and more religions and movements have been included, and the book is now addressed broadly to both Orthodox and non-Orthodox.